Hello and welcome to the live launch event of The Light We Keep, a Project Powerup story. So I'm Hazel Burton. I am the co-writer and co-producer on the video that you are about to watch. Now, you may have heard us as Talos talk about the work that we've been doing to help secure critical infrastructure in Ukraine since the start of the invasion 2.5 years ago. Project Powerup is a bit different. It's a very specific, very nuanced challenge that we became involved in. So this is a story of how electronic warfare is playing out in Ukraine and its effect on power grids across the country and its effect on its people as well. So they were facing an almighty problem with wide-ranging consequences, and it was proving very, very difficult to solve. So this is basically the story of that. So we're going to play the documentary for you first, and we'll come back and we'll have a Q&A with some of the people who are featured in the video. So without any further ado, let's play The Light We Keep.
Today, Russian forces struck critical infrastructure.
President Zelensky says more than 10 million Ukrainians are without
power, heat, other basic services.
Ukrainians unable to access GPS because it's being jammed locally on the ground.
That's right. Were launched 198 missiles and 60 drones against only energy infrastructure.
These are history-making events that have all centered around this one country in Eastern Europe. And none of this stuff has really happened anywhere else.
Imagine living in a war zone where even the comfort of light is taken away. Bombs fall, families seek shelter, and hospitals struggle to care for the wounded, all in pitch darkness. This is the reality of electronic warfare. It's chaotic, unpredictable, and new challenges arise daily.
That is a country that is fighting for its identity and is trying to assert its independence when they have not had that option for most of the 20th century.
We must do our best to provide for their family, for their neighbors, to live in some shadow of the normal life. We have no other option.
You don't need 100 million people to go solve something. You need 5 or 10 people who know what they want to go solve, have a belief, and go find the solution and they solve it.
Project Powerup is a story of human resilience and the innovative thinking required to face unprecedented challenges. And also how sometimes thinking outside of the box isn't enough. Sometimes you need to create an entirely new box.
Maybe it was just dumb luck that something fell into my lap that I went, I know the core of the issue, maybe I can help. I don't know, but we're gonna find out. Late 2015, early 2016 was Talos's first real involvement in Ukraine.
Since gaining independence in 1991, Ukraine's path has often conflicted with Russian interests. The 2014 annexation of Crimea by Russia marked a turning point, igniting a conflict that continues today. In this struggle for independence, Ukraine's power grid has become a prime target. In December 2015, Ukraine experienced one of the first major cyber attacks on a power grid, known as the Black Energy Attack.
The Black Energy attacks were an attack by Russia, and in those attacks they actually managed to turn the power out for some time. It was kind of one of the major cyber attacks that have occurred in that time period.
This sophisticated malware deployed by Russian actors was designed to infiltrate and disrupt industrial control systems. Black Energy targeted the systems managing Ukraine's power infrastructure, causing widespread blackouts that affected over 230,000 people. The attack marked a significant escalation in cyber warfare, demonstrating how vulnerable critical infrastructure could be to digital threats.
We had always postulated the possibility of that. I worked in cybersecurity in an electric utility, and that was the one thing we were always worried about. But we just, there was nowhere in the world we could cite that we saw that. And when that happened in Ukraine, we were like, wow, this is it. This has finally happened. Somewhere, some people had the power turned off through a malicious nation-state based attack.
The attack on Ukraine's power grid was not an isolated incident. In 2016, another cyber attack using the In-Destroyer malware cut power for a fifth of Kyiv and is considered to be a large-scale test for future attacks. By 2017, the NotPetya attack, also attributed to Russian actors, spread rapidly, causing massive disruptions across various sectors in Ukraine, which then spilled out to have an impact around the world. As the conflict between Russia and Ukraine intensified, these cyber attacks became a key strategy in Russia's efforts to destabilize Ukraine. Targeting the power grid not only disrupts daily life, but also seeks to disrupt the nation's ability to defend itself.
The fact that they could is a roadmap for other adversaries to look at and go, what worked, what didn't? And then how could we modify this to our ends if we wanted to do the same? At that point in time, a new era was born.
And we were like, man, we need to be like in Ukraine, helping these guys. One of the things in the intelligence game is you need to be in conflict zones to understand the conflicts.
Cybersecurity is not just sitting behind a monitor and doing cool hacker stuff. It means getting on a plane and flying somewhere sometimes, shaking someone's hand, looking them in the eyes and go, what can I do to help you? With no motivation other than I'm here to help. And to Cisco's credit, they give us runway and funding to do that.
Talos is a group of around 500 people all around the globe working together. Their primary job is to gather and gain an understanding of the threat landscape globally, what's happening, what malicious actors are doing, how they're doing it, what tools they're using.
There has forever been the core fundamental foundation of fight the bad guys, protect the world. I became aware of other power grid issues basically over very casual conversation at dinner.
I knew we were going to go meet a bunch of our Ukrainian partners, that we were going to meet a bunch of other power guys. And so he was going out to this conference to talk to some of the folks that we'd met on the intelligence side, who had essentially become people we were helping protect after the war started. And that we were just going to all meet up and have a drink, see how we were doing.
My name is Talos. I am head of the Dispatch and Control System Department. So we're trying to help and provide our dispatchers proper technical solutions, proper system to make very comfortable to manage our grid. We launched 198 missiles and 60 drones against only energy infrastructure. It's clear that any grid, electrical grid in the world or any country never faced with such significant damages.
Joe understands what they're facing. He's been there, he's walked those streets, he's met those people, and he's seen them, in peacetime, and he's watched them kind of convert onto this war footing, and he's seen the changes that happens there. And I think that properly affected him.
They were just telling me stories, wild stories, of things that we would never have to endure here in the United States. They were telling me about drones buzzing their house that were heading for the cities or for critical infrastructure. For their anti-air defense, they raided a production like play theater and stole the spotlights because they're very bright, and then used them in the sky to look for attacks coming into their cities. They're very creative, and they have a tremendous amount of ingenuity, and I complain if my latte is too hot, right? And so I am just enraptured by what they're telling me. And sort of in between all of this, it was more of a complaint. It wasn't really like, hey, do something about this. It's like, we can't even get GPS to work in our country, and it's messing with the power grid. And I didn't interrupt him on that one, but I was like, I just kind of put a pin on it.
And so Joe went to that dinner, and then eventually comes back and says, hey, these guys say that there's like a electronic warfare problem, like a big one. And I'm like, what's that have to do with like us? And he's like, let me tell you a story. Did you know that time and power are associated to each other? And I'm like, no. Like, draw me a picture. Like, I'm missing it.
Ukraine faces a unique challenge in this conflict. Not just physical and cyber attacks, but also electronic warfare, which impacts their power grid in ways never seen before.
What we saw was, It was a side effect of what was happening, and that side effect could occur both from Russian jamming or from Ukrainian jamming, trying to protect those environments from incoming Russian attacks.
Ukraine faced a double-edged sword. They had to jam GPS to defend against missiles and drones, but in doing so, they destabilized their own power grid, which relied on those signals.
It doesn't take very much energy to kind of overrun that GPS signal. It's a very, 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 very soft signal in the grand scheme of things by the time it gets here. What we and Joe, even having had experience in that, had to learn was like, wait, why is GPS important here?
GPS isn't just for navigation. It's crucial for keeping the power grid in sync. Think of it like a conductor for an orchestra, ensuring all parts of the grid keep in time with each other. In Ukraine, electronic warfare is disrupting these GPS signals, and without this precise timing, the power grid becomes unstable, increasing the risk of blackouts and equipment damage. This invisible battle over the electromagnetic spectrum has far-reaching consequences for Ukraine's infrastructure and daily life.
Later on in the evening, I would say, hey, about that GPS thing, I know it's real important. Have you guys looked at atomic clocks or something like that? And they went, they're $30,000 to $40,000 a piece. We need a lot of them. Would you like to cut me a check? I was like, I don't have that kind of money, guys. I'm sorry. That began, I think, this official journey of me slowly assembling over 7 or 8 months this multinational, multi-company team of dedicated power grid security practitioners who were with me, who had big hearts and tremendous amount of empathy, and said, let's make something better for the Ukrainians. Through a series of executive meetings, I got directed to a small team inside of Cisco, and they focus on industrial environments. And I went to these guys and I said, hey, I have a really unique problem, and I've got this team, and we're all brainstorming, what do we do? And he figured out a way to modify the internal firmware of our industrial Ethernet switch.
To address the challenge of GPS disruptions, engineers at Cisco developed enhanced clock recovery algorithms. These algorithms allow Cisco's industrial Ethernet switches to maintain accurate time synchronization, even in the absence of GPS signals. And these modified switches can generate precise timing signals that keep the grid's operations in sync. When GPS signals are jammed or unavailable, these modified switches step in, acting as a reliable alternative time source. They ensure that the timing data required for grid synchronization remains accurate, preventing the miscoordination that can lead to power outages and instability. These custom devices, which are about the size of a pizza box, can withstand the harsh conditions of electronic warfare. This includes resistance to temperature fluctuations and electromagnetic interference, ensuring continuous operation in the incredibly challenging environment of a conflict zone. This innovation not only safeguards the power supply, but also strengthens the overall infrastructure against future threats.
We don't keep hundreds of these things laying around on a shelf. We make them as we need them. I think we got these assembled and made within a week and a half. Start to finish, from raw prototype to delivery, less than 3 weeks.
We were very happy with this possibility to start this process and to have this understanding that we will be flexible. Yeah, we're trying to update and improve the Steam firmware to reach our goals, to follow exactly our requirements in our situation. So this flexibility was very, very crucial and great advantage. So we just switch off from old GPS clock to Cisco switch, and we receive this signal. So it works. It works.
And they sent us the actual packet captures of it working, and I just touchdown. Great feeling. It's a fantastic feeling.
We had this gold ticket, and we used it.
Just recently, they just said these devices are integral to our daily operations inside of Ukraine. What you have done to help Ukraine is working. and that's irreplaceable.
Project Powerup was implemented in November 2023. From that November to July 2024, there have been almost 400 air raids across Ukraine. Alerts for these raids lasted for about an hour on average. Prior to Project Powerup, this would have resulted in over 16 days worth of disruptions to Ukraine's power grid, which would have meant potential blackouts across the country, whilst drones and missiles attempted to reach their target. But with this solution, Ukraine's electronic grid has been able to keep the lights on and keep the power going without interruption for millions of Ukrainians, despite air raids still occurring every single day.
Due permanent risk of attacks, our dispatchers, when they have proper tools, they can stop this system damage and be 100% sure that this decision is okay and it will help in current situation.
And I know it makes the team so happy to know that this humble project that started with just me and grew to like almost 40 people, that we're making a difference. It's not a one and done. We're still there helping them fight new problems.
We're a small piece. Like even this is as cool as it is and as excited as we are is a small piece. And so it is a small victory for them and it makes their life just a little easier. But when they wake up, they're still in a country at war.
And every day, they're not crying. They say, okay, I'm tired. It's not for me. I cannot do it. I yesterday already did it. Every day, hard working every day to restore and keep lights for millions of Ukrainians.
What does this mean for Ukraine going forward? Or what does it mean? I guess maybe a way to think about it is, what does it mean for the world? I think we've all learned that GPS is not as stable as we would like it to be.
When we're talking to people who are in positions where they will have to make decisions, one of the things that we're telling them is, you will have options available to you that you don't even think about right now if you are in certain crisis conditions. And you should think now, like, if things are really bad, how would you respond? And don't constrain yourself to the box that you've written for yourself in peacetime. Those kind of discussions that in an advanced, internet hustle culture world, like, don't make sense. But when you're talking 155 millimeter artillery shells and power off, it's a different calculus entirely.
I think that in future, some standards will be changed. And some approaches will also be changed, because now the GPS is very weak.
There is perhaps an over-reliance on it globally, certainly in the United States, certainly with power grids. And I think this work is slowly reshaping the conversation about how we think about power grid stability as it relates to GPS.
One of the things that's been great at Cisco is we've never been told no when we're like, we want to do this thing for them, we want to do this thing for them. I want to give away product for free because they're in this position now where they're at war with Russia. It is never been an argument. So yeah, it's real easy to find a reason to work an extra hour for Ukraine, no problem.
Knowing that you've had that kind of impact on the lives of others changes you. It changes you, because now you're like, what else can I do?
Okay, so that was The Light We Keep. If you missed any of the documentary, you joined us a little later, it is available now on the Cisco Talos YouTube channel. Our colleagues behind the scenes are adding a link into the comments on our social media channels, so do go ahead and visit that when you can. And we are now going to have a little bit of a Q&A with some of the people who were featured in the documentary. So we'll talk about what's happened since, some of the discussions that we've been having about building up more resilience in power grids. Going to take your questions as well. So if there's anything that you would like to know about Project Powerup, the people involved, the making of the documentary, and our work to help protect critical infrastructure in Ukraine, then put your question into the comments wherever you are watching us, and we will get to as many of those as we can in the next 20 minutes or so. So I am joined today by the documentary's main protagonist, Joe Marshall, as well as Talos's VP, Matt Wachinski, and our Senior Director of Threat Intelligence and Interdiction, Matt Only. So I'm going to kick off with a couple of questions of my own, and then, we'll get some from our audience. So do keep those questions coming. Joe, I'm going to come to you first. So a little bit in the documentary, we talked about the impact, right? And what's happened since the switches were implemented. And I wonder if you could maybe elaborate on that a little bit. How is this affecting the daily lives of Ukrainians?
This is one of the things that I occasionally dwell on, which is after we were able to deliver the devices to Ukraine, they're still being used every day. So every time there's an air raid, the statistics of how much they help just grow, which is a very sad statistic, to be honest with you. I'd rather we not have shipped anything to Ukraine and there was no war, but that's not the world we live in right now. It's truly hard to quantify. And the reason it's so difficult is, the last statistic I think we got from Ukrainians was like 16 days of additional power have been delivered. How many lives have been saved because of that? Because a hospital didn't need to worry about a generator or somebody on an oxygen machine in their home, or you start to realize that, essential power delivery is not just for watching television and checking the internet. It's for basic healthcare and for critical infrastructure and services. And the denial of that jeopardizes human life. That's a tough question to put a good answer to, other than I'm just glad we're still helping.
Yeah. Wachinski, you were one of the first people that Joe came to after coming, from that dinner with ideas and things buzzing around his head. What do you want people to kind of take away from the work that Joe and the larger team have been able to carry out here?
So I think one of the things that people should take away from this is that if you find a problem in the world and it's worth solving, you can build anything with the right kind of go at it. And we didn't start out with how we were going to do this or what we needed to go about it. We had to go collect that coalition of folks who were willing to go after this problem and were super passionate about it. And we were able to find them, and we were able to do this project pretty rapidly with those folks. And so that's a fun thing that you can help do something in the world with when you find these things. So folks out there that are trying to come up with a new problem or go after something or do something, that passion to drive that is one of the more important things in life.
Yeah, absolutely. And Only as well, I know you have a very strong relationship with Ukraine. You've been there several times, and you have been integral in, everything that we have set up to help protect their critical infrastructure since the start of the invasion. What do you want people to take away from this? Any messages that you would like to really land with people?
I mean, the first is that Ukraine is still a country in need of our assistance and our support. The Ukrainian people are showing themselves to be strong and resilient, but they can't do it themselves. And across the spectrum of specialties that the West can offer, I think we need to be offering as much as we possibly can. and we've done. And I think the other thing I would say is that what we have done is such a small piece in the grander scheme of things, but it is the part that we could do, and I'm very proud that we stepped up and did do it with Joe's leadership.
Yeah. Yeah, Joe, you mentioned we found a problem that we could help with, and we went with it.
Yeah,
Um,
I could have never predicted that any of it would have ever even worked when we started it. But I think that is what we do here at Talos, which is find the bad and stop the bad. Do that first, worry about the rest later. And occasionally it doesn't work out. Actually, I would say a lot of the times it doesn't work out the way we think it's going to work out. And if the sun and the moon and the stars aligned, and for anyone else there, I've been asked this quite a few times, and I don't think I've ever had the best answer for it. But when I think about like, I should have said that when they asked me this question, I think the way that this even worked with what we did is A, it's the genetics of Talos, but B, my leadership bought in. They bought in. They said, sure, this is great. Let's do this. If we can do this.
Well,
So,
I think it's also important to highlight that this was a Cisco-wide effort.
Yeah, 100%.
This was not just like Talos identified the problem and worked it with the right groups to find a solution, but the engineers and the PMs who made space for the work, and the VPs that saw the value in doing something that looked very narrow in scope, and the executive leadership that was shown at the C-level for this project, all of that was important. And we haven't had the opportunity to list all the people who were part of this. But it was an enormous effort, and it was a lot. We met a lot of new people doing this work.
Yeah, there were no roadblocks. Anytime I brought this up, either I brought it up or I think Wachinski brought it up, we had instant buy-in. A lot of questions about how we would do it, because it had never been pulled off before, but there was no like head shake of a no, we're not doing this. And that is I think a testament to both Talos and Cisco. Like it comes from the very top. It really does.
Yeah. Joe, just picking up on what you said earlier about things not always working out the way that sometimes you think that they will. When you came away from that from that dinner, you were dead set on atomic clocks being the answer, right? Can you maybe the documentary like fleetingly mentioned this, but maybe you can kind of mention about how you were so dead set on atomic clocks and how your mind was changed to the modified switch.
Right. Well, I'm going to throw Wachinski under the bus too a little bit, because he was my co-collaborator that we need atomic clocks, but in his defense, I sold it really well. So like even the suggestion that I made was like, no one has ever done an atomic clock in a substation anywhere in the world that I'm even remotely aware of. So even the suggestion of it was, okay, sure, you want to invent a way to do this with something I can't even buy. And the silliness of it, when I look back at it was, yeah, that was a pretty silly thing to say. The reason that we were so obsessed on atomic clocks is because it was the best within hundreds of a nanoseconds of accuracy for synchronization. But I think the deeper we dug into it, great hobbyist community for it, but like supply chain wise, it was going to be near to impossible for a cesium or a rubidium clock in the speed that we needed it and in the quantity that we needed it. Because, this is what 2023 when we were doing this, and supply chains were still snarled from COVID. A lot of these are made in China, and just getting it from here to there. And then the other bigger issue that I didn't even know about was, well, how would we put this in a Cisco product if we decided to do that? And the answer was, sort of in the postmortem, we found out you can't. Like, that's just not something that we do as a company. So, that's where I kind of, no rocket ships has always been like a Talos motto, right? And perfect is the enemy of good enough. Like, so we didn't need atomic clocks. And when the Cisco IoT experts I talked with said, look, man, you're overthinking this, I actually got angry. I'm like, no, you didn't hear what I said, guys. I said atomic clocks. and they were like, yeah, we heard you, but you need to understand the full capabilities of what we're suggesting. And I think within like 5 minutes they won me over. And the moral of that story is you should listen to people smarter than you about those things. Listen to your experts. They're very good at what they do. And that's kind of where we kind of just ditched atomic clocks for these IE 5000 switches that we had to modify. Maybe there'll be a future where $30,000 to $40,000 atomic clocks live in substations, but that day is not today, and it's certainly not in Ukraine.
Yeah. Just seen a question from our audience actually on the topic. How long did it take to make the switches once you decided that was the route you were going to go down?
So that's actually kind of the beauty of this, is that we've been making these IE 5000 switches for years, right? They're a commodity switch. They're very popular all over the world. Ruggedized against temperature, vibration, you name it. They're meant to go in really inhospitable places like a substation. The trick was two things. One, we needed to modify the firmware in the switch. There's like anti-jamming, anti-spoofing already kind of built into it, but these things were not designed to go into a war zone. Like really and truly nothing is, unless it's a military thing. So we had to use a lot of feedback from our Ukrainian partners of, would this be good enough? Would this work? So they were a absolute essential partner for us figuring out what is going to be good enough for these switches. And then basically, it's not easy to rewrite the firmware when you're in a massive company for one of our popular selling products, which I think is a testament to big Cisco and certainly to the IoT business unit that, we had to cryptographically sign semi-official firmware for Ukraine, which I think very few people in this company can even do. Like that's the level of executive buy-in you have to do something like this. And the IE 5000s checked all the boxes. We could produce them quick. We had already done all the heavy lifting in our prototyping phase of would this work? And then the second thing was, of course, we had to get them in Ukraine and test them. Like we had no idea if this was going to work on power equipment, because the Ukrainian power equipment didn't know what to do when the jamming started and GPS cut away. They just threw their hands up in the air and said, well, I'm not going to do anything now, which is not the fault of the vendor's equipment in Ukraine. Who designs power equipment to operate in a war zone? The answer is really nobody. Mm-hmm. So we had to test it in theater with Ukrainian power equipment. And then we would modify here in the States, send it back, update to them, a little bit of back and forth before we really hit pay dirt, before we really found that touchdown. And then from there, it was rapid iteration into an official signed firmware update and get it to Ukrainians on that switch. I think from actual production, like from the prototype existing and being made in our production facilities, it took about a month to get everything. We got to clear customs and the transparency for humanitarian aid delivery, because we donated, $1 million plus of equipment to them. Just to get this to them. And a testament to Cisco, our Ukrainian partners, and our government partners for making this happen as fast as we humanly and legally could. So, yeah.
And as Taras in the documentary says, it works. I remember I was on the interview with him when we asked him all these questions, and we said, give us an example of this unit working. And he was like, now. And now. I know, like it's working.
Yeah. They call them the magic switches.
The magic pizza boxes.
Yeah, the magic pizza boxes is what they call them.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about what this project has inspired in terms of some of the conversations that we're having about GPS, perhaps an over-reliance on it from a power station perspective. Only would you be able to share some of the guidance, some of the insights that you have for organizations in this space to consider based on what we've seen happening in Ukraine?
Well, I mean, the first thing to say is you don't jam GPS remotely, right? And so you would need to have someone, if we're talking the US, for example, but for any country that's trying to figure out whether they're at risk, you would have to have someone nearby, relatively nearby, the power station in question. And so I don't want to like spread panic, like there's some sort of like core fundamental problem here, like Ukraine is experiencing, what hopefully is something that places don't experience going forward. And so I think if you are in a situation where you feel you may be in that situation, then you need to be looking at the technologies that we put together and see if that would help you in your specific situation, or if you had some other way to mitigate this. What I would say is what I think we've done is given the rest of the world time to analyze the risks here and determine what action needs to be taken. And so we have a solution. It may not be the right solution everywhere, but I think what we're saying is, hey, here's something you probably haven't thought of. I know it's not something that Joe or I thought of before it came up. So what do we need to do? What's the correct way to build going forward to ensure that we're going to be able to live up to our obligations from a power generation and distribution standpoint?
Yeah. And yeah, as you said in the documentary, doing it now, in a moment where you might not have to, when you're not up against the wall, doing it now. Wojciechowski, is there anything that you'd like to add to that in terms of, conversations that we're having about building up resilience, and just like having those conversations with organizations in this space?
Yeah, I think it's important to maybe take like a step back and just look at it from a larger picture perspective. When we talk about resilience, one of the things I think a lot of people forget about is the infrastructure of society and the things that are just kind of sitting there: roads, power, water. They're just expected to exist. And so we don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about them or figuring out how we make sure they stay on, because we just expect them to always be on. And GPS is sort of like that. I know I'm rapidly approaching 50, but when I started driving, we didn't have GPS. You had a map. You got in your car, you thought about it, you memorized all the streets, you went somewhere. Now, when you get into your car, you have your phone or you have your onboard navigation inside of your car. It takes you wherever you want to go. And so the question is if you got into your car today and you started driving down the road and it didn't tell you where you were going anymore, would you actually be able to get there? And if you can't get there, how would you figure out how you're going to get there? And so I think GPS is just one of those things that we all take for granted, and we don't build it into our resiliency plans for how we run our organizations. And there's a lot of things that we rely on every day that we probably don't think about when we think about an incident or an emergency, or a natural disaster or something that may occur for your home or your business that you didn't plan for. And so it's a time to spend thinking about those contingencies and how you would compensate for them going away.
Just looking through some of the audience questions, so just gonna maybe like summarize it into one. And Olney, I'll come to you on this. Can you just provide an update? Obviously, this Project Powerup, this is not necessarily to do with cybersecurity per se, but we are, helping Ukraine on that side as well, and have been for a long time. Can you provide an update on the cybersecurity side of things, of protecting critical infrastructure? How's that going? Anything that you want to call out?
Yeah, we continue to provide gratis software and support and threat hunting services from the Talos threat hunting team and some of the other researchers here at Talos to help protect those organizations. We've been involved in some incident response in some of the events as well. It's one of those ongoing things that we continue to do. And there's not a lot of glory in like, every day showing up and doing the same thing for a couple of years, but we made a commitment at the beginning of this conflict that we would be here until peace returned to Ukraine. And that's what we're doing.
Yeah. All right. I think maybe time for one more question. Joe, you said just before the credits rolled that this kind of experience, it changes you. You know, having this effect on the life of others changes you. Tell us more about that. Like, how has this experience changed you as a human being? And yeah, just kind of give us some insights into why is Joe different now?
There comes a point in time, or there came a point in time for me in this project when we were well and truly onto something that we think this is going to work, that you start to realize the impact, big and small, of what this could do. And to Matt's point, it's a small thing that we've been able to do because there's still a country at war, but sometimes it can be a big thing. And you start to look at yourself and just you summon a little bit of empathy in your body, and you know, I had hot water and a shower this morning, and you know, my television worked, and you know what if I'm a kid and I'm watching cartoons, you know, and I don't hear an air raid siren, but suddenly I don't lose power and I can watch my cartoons. Like how do you put the price on a kid just getting 5 more minutes of their childhood, like, you know, without having to remember that they live in a war zone? Like, I don't know how to quantify that. I don't know how to pick a value for that. Which even if it was just 5 minutes for some small child in Ukraine, it was worth it. It was 100% worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just can't. I could not help but compare and contrast how good I've got it versus how tough some people have it elsewhere. And then you just start to say, this inequity cannot stand. You know, we have to make a difference. You know, if we can make a difference, I have to make a difference. And then you realize that you can make some profound changes for people. And it hit something inside of me that maybe has always been there. And, you know, Cisco and Talos were just able to help me and enable it and really make it into something. And then you start to think, well, what else can I do? How else can I help others? It's about helping others, fighting a good fight. You know, we're not in it for the glory. We're in it for the help. Let's do some good work.
Yeah.
That's why we're still in Ukraine. We're still helping other people all across the globe with no expectation of any kind of anything back other than let's do this together. And I'm grateful for the privilege. I really am.
Wojcinski, Elni, I think is there anything that you'd like to add on to that before we close?
I think Joe did an amazing job there. I think at the end of the day, you know, we stand with the Ukrainians. We're going to be there until this war is over. And then I think this entire team is going to go to Ukraine and go hang out with them because that's where we would like to be.
Yep, agreed.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Matt, and Joe for joining me today. Thank you so much to all of our audience for watching as well. So The Light We Keep, that is on our Cisco Talos YouTube channel for you to watch whenever you like. Do share it with your colleagues, with your friends, with your family, if you are so inclined. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for participating. And until next time, we will see you very soon. Thank you.